alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Welcome everybody to another episode of Pod from the Crypt Interview series. Today we have a very special guest, one of the craziest and best writers in horror movie history. Please welcome Peter Atkins. Peter, what's up, my man? How you doing?
Hey, Chris. It's great to be here. Thank you very much for asking me.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. I know you wanted to talk specifically about this movie, so I want you to appreciate the fact I had to lift a treadmill out the way, open an old closet, and dig that poster out of the closet and hang it up behind me. And, you know, I used to be a smoker, and I can already, the glass is yellowed. It's disgusting. So thank you for making me get it out, because now I'll know to spray it down, give it a Windex or something. Anyway.
How old is that? Is that from the
poster is from, when did the movie come out? 89?
88.
88, yeah. This is actually the Italian poster, so, you know, maybe that came out 6 months later.
Right.
And I think US was first, although every now and then this was a New World Picture, which was Roger Corman's old company. And sometimes they did open them in other territories first. But yeah, this was a weird Christmas movie in the US. It opened on December 23rd. 1988.
That's
crazy. Which, I mean, it did all right, so maybe they knew what they were doing. But I remember when they told me that was a date, I thought, Jesus Christ, you know, that's hardly Jingle All the Way or whatever.
With Arnold, right? In case the fans don't know, what we are talking about is that it's okay. Peter Atkins wrote the Hellraiser sequel, Hellraiser 2, Hellbound. You also wrote, we're not going to talk about it that much, but you also wrote the third installment. And did you write the fourth one as well?
Yeah, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah.
And Wishmaster, which is one of my favorite movies. And maybe we can have him. Yeah, maybe we can have him back on another day and we can talk about that one. But sure. I really want to talk about Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, because I feel like you guys really upped the ante on this one, and you really raised the stakes. So before we get into the actual details of the movie, I just wanted the fans to know kind of how they got you on board and kind of your relationship with Clive Barker and the director Tony Randall.
Sure. I'm totally got to answer that, Chris. I want to apologize in advance to people who've seen me do interviews over the 30 years since we made this thing, because they'll have heard these stories before. So to you guys, you should listen and watch Chris's podcast, because it's worth watching. But I apologize for telling you specific people the same stuff again. But Clive and I met in 1974. Chris, we're both from Liverpool in England originally, and in fact, Pinhead, Doug Bradley, the guy who plays the pin-headed monster, the lead Cenobite, is also from Liverpool. I met them both on the same day in July 1974. I was still at it was my last year in high school, and Clive had just finished college, because I want you to know he's much older than I am. Much older, 3 years. And we were the three of us plus a varying number of other friends over the next few years. We're in a theatre company together, live theatre, from the mid-70s through to the early 80s. So I'd been part of this, well, certainly the theatre company itself, but this artistic collective that included Clive and Doug and various other people. Jane Woodward, for example, who later changed her professional into Jane Wildgoose, is the girl who made those incredible costumes for Hellraiser and Hellbound. And she was never a member of the theatre company, but she's, part of the gang, part of the circle. Nick Vince and Simon Bamford, who played two of the other Cenobites in both the first two movies, were not in Dog Company, our theatre company, but they were in the sort of fringe theatre scene and had been in plays that Clive wrote. It's a very long-winded answer, Chris. I'm sorry. What actually happened specifically in terms of the movie was I'd buggered off from the theatre company and moved back to Liverpool to get back into rock and roll. And I had a band up there. And then Clive went on to suddenly become rich and famous, having done the Books of Blood books. Couple of other movies were made that he didn't direct. He might have done the screenplay adaptations for them, I'm not sure, but they were based on stories from the Books of Blood. But he wasn't happy and he wanted to be more in control of his own projects. So he partnered with a guy called Chris Figg, who was a young producer. I'm not sure he'd done anything before Hellraiser, but he'd worked in the industry, so he had connections. He and Clive put the package together that convinced New World to pay for Hellraiser. And then when New World were happy enough, Hellraiser hadn't been released, but they'd seen it, and they were confident, it was going to do all right for them. Right. So they wanted a sequel, and they wanted to get that going. So Clive was kind enough to tell Chris Figg he should have a chat with me, and somehow I fooled him into hiring me. So, Clive's pre-approval helped a lot, but Chris Figg had to sort of press the green button and persuade New World to pay somebody who'd never written a screenplay before.
Oh, wow.
So that proves that Chris is a good producer because he can pry money out of people and persuade them of ridiculous things like, yeah, hire this guy. He's playing guitar up in Liverpool, but I think he'll write the sequel for us. So.
Did you write anything prior? I mean, besides the screenplay, did you ever write any kind of short stories, short horror, or worked with Clive on his book, or any ideas?
In order, yes, no, yes.
Too many questions. I'm sorry.
I want to be very careful. I did not work with Clive on his book in the sense that he wrote the Books of Blood. That's his breakthrough thing. Doug and I, as his oldest friends and artistic collaborators, we were the first people lucky enough to read the stories. He literally wrote in longhand. I don't think he owned it. Obviously, he owns a computer now, but I'm not sure he ever owned a typewriter. I think he went straight from writing longhand to computer years later. Anyway, he wrote in longhand. So Doug and I were the first people to read the stories in Books of Blood, and we certainly, the way you do when you read friends' work. He gave notes, ideas, friendly suggestions. So I felt we were all, still part of the thing, but, that's his baby, 100%. I had started writing because I turned 30 when I was still playing the pubs and clubs in Liverpool. And I don't know if you know this, Chris, but it's a sad truth of life that if you're already a rock star by the time you're 30, you can stay a rock star. But if you're not a rock star yet, it's not going to happen. You're not going to become, I'm sure there are hundreds of examples that prove me wrong, but generally speaking, you don't get to be a pop star after you turn 30. So I went back to my other love, literature and theater, and had started writing. I think I'd sold one short story, I think, prior to the Hellbound gig, but it hadn't been published yet. One of the ways Clive persuaded Chris Figg that maybe I could do the job was he was kind enough to pass on a novella I'd written to Chris. So Chris, at least he can put one word after the other in a vague, correct order. So yeah, but no, I really was not established at all. This was my first professional credit.
Wow.
As I say, there was a short story that came out in Fear magazine in England, which I think got sold before this came out, but it was published shortly after. It's a long time ago, Chris. We're all old men now. I don't know.
Over what, 32 years ago?
It is, yeah. Yeah, I was, I wrote the first draft of this it's actually 33 years ago, 87. summer of '87. I was still living in Liverpool. Chris Figg, having said yes, didn't want to didn't want to leave me running around wild up north, so he put me in a hotel in London, and I wrote the first draft, I think June or July '87, on a manual typewriter, by the way. I wonder, maybe that's the last. I wonder if that's the last Hollywood movie that wasn't written on a computer. 1987, manual type. That might be. I might be a footnote in film history, Chris. I never realized that. The last one, because computers were out. I just couldn't afford one. So yeah, it was very old school. I wrote it, and they used to have what they call typing services. Production companies would hire good typists to like retype anyway. I'm sure you're not as interested in that.
No, I am. So I'll make you a quick note. I write too, and I had a reference, one of my shorts. I wrote about this demon girl, and I read your script, and I read Clive's, the original Hellraiser, because I wanted it to be like these graphic descriptions. And the descriptions in both of them are just amazing, especially, and we'll get to it in a little bit, the scene when Julia pops through the bed. It's just so descriptive. And even in Clive's, in the opening of Hellraiser, I remember reading that original script, and I was like, my writing doesn't hold a candle to this kind of writing. I was like, it's so descriptive. And it's weird because like I reference scripts now. I mean, that's what I do. I get ideas and like how to like, find ideas, find the text, how they wrote it, the correct format. Mm-hmm. And scripts today are so different. Everything is just boom, 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 quick, to the point, next, see you later. Yeah. And that wasn't yours or his script. It was very descriptive of like, I wish I could think of the words off the bat, but like, that starting off scene where the chains and the flesh is just very good wording.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'll tell you one reason is because neither of us knew any better. I'm not kidding. Although Clive had written stage plays, obviously that's what we spent 7 years doing. So he certainly was used to writing things that were just dialogue. But he'd also by then been the author of the Books of Blood, and he was certainly working on his first novel, Damnation Game. And I'd started writing, as I say, short stories and novellas. We didn't know that you weren't meant to lard screenplays with description. And nobody complained, so I guess it was good. But I think you'll find there are probably scripts from the mid and late 80s when Hellraiser and Hellbound were done that are just as terse and spare as the scripts you're talking about now. You know who Walter Hill is, right? He was a great writer and director. He died a few years back. One of the original writers of Alien. Okay. God, I'm going blank on it. A sort of great neo-noir guy, wrote a lot of tough guy crime movies.
Right.
You should look him up, especially if you're a writer yourself, as you say, because he really, back in, I want to say even the early 80s, he was the guy, and there's pros and cons to this, RIP, bless his memory and all that, but there's pros and cons to what Walter Hill did, which is he was the king of the epigrammatic single line. Like basically it was a shot list with dialogue. Okay. Like he would really say, this happens, so-and-so says something, this happens. And it makes for a good read. It's like it's fast. And then you get the more wordy ones. And as I say, I shouldn't speak for Clive, but I think it's true of him. It was certainly true of me. I didn't know any better. I figured, well, you want to make them feel something.
Right.
You can't just say he slashes the razor across his belly. You want to throw some adjectives in there to suggest it fucking hurts when you do that.
Right.
So, yeah, it's funny. I don't know if you're still in the habit of reading scripts. The other thing that's started happening, and I'm guilty of this myself in a lot of the scripts I've done, is because you know that the stuff in between the dialogue is not something that is ever read by the final audience. You know, your final audience obviously sees and hears the movie.
Right.
So I'm always very aware that I'm writing for two audiences: the person who's reading the script, as well as, you know, the guys and girls who will see and hear the actual movie. So that sort of direct address to the reader trick. There's I know you're way you're way younger than we all are. Do you know? Are you film buff? Did you know Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that was an original screenplay by William Goldman, and there's a very, I mean, I think he wrote it more 1967, and I won't quote it exactly. I think I'll probably get it wrong, but he was famous because he was one of the very first guys to do that direct address to the reader. Butch and Sundance are robbing a train or whatever. They plant some dynamite, and it's, you know, you telling the story, and then he moves to the next paragraph and says ... The biggest fucking explosion you've ever seen on a movie screen. And it was great, right?
Right.
And in 1967, nobody was doing stuff like that.
Right.
So it was like, a lot of people said, yeah, he sold that script just based on the fact that he slammed the reader's face in it. So, long story short, any way that conveys what you want to convey to the people reading the script, to persuade them, I mean, just to be venal about it, to persuade them to pony up the money and let you make it, you know, and to convey to the cast and crew, this is what it should feel like, this is what we want, this is what we're going for. So I always tell people, when people are dumb enough to ask me to talk to film school classes or writing classes, it's like there really are no rules.
Right.
My thing, it was always, imagine the movie's already been made, because, you know, we're all movie fans, right? We love them. So I just imagine the movie's already been made, and then I watch that movie in my head and I write down what I see. So I think that's the Pete Atkins secret to screenwriting, is pretend you're watching the movie and write down what you see.
That's a great rule of thumb. I love it. Going to the script and the story, I was just curious of what either Clive or the production company, like what kind of notes they gave you to transcend into the screenplay. And yeah, we'll go from there. That's a big chunk.
Yeah. It's like, you know, a musical, they say, yeah, give me something. I can do 30 minutes with that. Well, I'll do a bit. I'll do it. No. Just so you know, even before I put words to paper, when Chris Fig said, yeah, okay, well, you know, we'll let this guy in. So the way the process began was, and it was just like being back in the days of the theatre company. Clive and I spent an evening together at his flat apartment in London, and we came up with the story, essentially the story that you ended up seeing. We came up with it. We opened one bottle of whiskey, and by the time we finished that bottle, we had pretty much the story outlined. So then I went away and wrote, again, these terms will be familiar to you, what they call a treatment,
right?
Which is sort of not quite a scene by scene telling of the story, but a fairly detailed, more than a synopsis.
Like three pages of 3 to 5 pages. Like that.
Yeah, absolutely. They vary from between 3 and 20, depending who you're fortunate enough to work with. The treatment I did for Hellbound was 10, as it happened.
Oh, wow. Good.
It was fairly detailed. You know, it was pretty, had the, you know, clear act divisions and whatever. So that was the first thing I did. Chris, and then we got notes from Chris Fig, smart notes. Chris was always about like, make it tighter, make it tighter. I remember before I started writing, his only instruction to me was, it was like that scene in a TV show. Like I got to the door and it says, "Oh, Pete, one thing." And I turned back and he said, "I don't want to see any dialogue on the page that's longer than that." Meaning, you know, don't give me 15-line speeches. The first thing I did was write a 25-line speech for Dr. Chenard, so I broke his
love
heart.
that character too.
Thanks.
Great character.
But the thing is, but I'm not telling that story against Chris. I'm saying it's like he knew. It's like, sure, you can do it. You can, if you're mouthy like me, you can give somebody a long speech, and if you've got a great actor to deliver it, as we were lucky enough to have with Ken Cranham, who played Chenard. But Chris's advice was good. You know, don't be doing this with your dialogue. 3 or 4 lines, keep it moving, keep it snappy. So I've lost track of my own story, Chris. Oh, well, so he had notes on the 10-page treatment, but basically they were just, you know, good, smart, tighten it up a bit notes. And then he basically just gave me the green light and said, go write a draft. So as I said, he put me in a hotel. I wrote a 95-page first draft. And
now, can I ask you a quick question? The treatment, if without the notes, do you think it would have been like a longer, larger movie, like with more stuff in there? And then he gave you the notes, and you said it tightened it down, and that's how you came up with the first 95-page draft?
Oh, sure. Not really. He wasn't. I mean, he wasn't budgetary conscious or length conscious particularly. I mean, to be honest, when I said he just wanted it tightened up, what that was code for is I can't remember what he said, Chris.
Right.
It's 33 years ago. But I know that other Chris Figg's general MO was keep it tight, keep it moving. So I remember in the negative that he didn't say, I hate this part, can we lose this character?
Right.
Can we keep it all set in the house? There were no notes like that. So I remember that because I remember that there wasn't anything like that, I'm going to assume that it was like they were fairly efficient, small scale notes. No, actually, we were lucky with, because as you were kind enough to say in your intro, we really did sort of open it up from Hellraiser is a masterpiece. You know, that's
agreed.
Clive 100% written and directed. That's his thing, and it's a significant horror movie, let's say. So when I say we opened it up, I'm not suggesting it needed improving in any way, but we didn't want to do the same again, you know. And as I say, the original story was Clive and I jammed it out in one night anyway. So his instinct as well as mine was to open it up, make it bigger. And as we went through the various stages, we never really had resistance about that. You know, we shot the first two in England, as I know you know. The pound, the English currency, was very weak against the dollar at that point, which was actually really lucky for us because it meant that New World, I mean, you know, I'm sure their accountants were looking carefully at what we were spending and how we were spending it, but the dollar could buy a lot of pounds in 1987. So they weren't policing it too much until, I'm getting slightly ahead of the story now, but until about 2 weeks before Tony was going to start shooting the damn thing. And then there was a massive Wall Street crash. Not the Wall Street crash, that's 1929, but I think they called it Black Tuesday. There was a big crash, and suddenly the dollar was worth a hell of a lot less than it had been on Monday night. And 2 weeks before he was shooting the thing, Tony saw nearly a third of his budget just disappear.
Didn't the production company didn't they file for bankruptcy or something like that during the second movie? And I'm just gathering
not in the second movie. Yes, New World went out of maybe we bust them. I don't know. I don't think so. They did a few more, but yes, within a year or so, it was definitely not during production, and they released it. It was a New World release in the US, But yeah, some within a year, I think I don't know if they filed for bankruptcy, but maybe they did Chapter 11, and one of the senior guys, a guy called Larry Coppin. You know, I'm not knocking the money guys, but they're like fucking wolves, you know. So it's you know, they just dived in there and ripped out what they could for themselves. And Larry Coppin got the Hellraiser franchise. He started a much smaller production company called Transit. I can't remember if it was Transatlantic Pictures or Transatlantic Entertainment, but Larry, like his share of the spoils from the destruction of New World was the Hellraiser franchise. So he was the guy. His company Transatlantic made Hellraiser 3, and then he went into business. He got a distribution deal for Hellraiser 3 with Miramax, and then Miramax bought the franchise from him, and they made Hellraiser 4 Bloodline. I've gone way too far into the future for you. You want to talk about this movie?
No, but it's okay. You brought up a good point, and it brings me to another question. So you said that they took away a third of the budget. So did that screw up the second half of the movie? And like, did you have like all these ideas that when they went into hell? Which, listen, the movie I saw, it was awesome, and there was great scenes with the eye full of blood and the mirrors and all this crazy awesome stuff. But did it affect the budget? Did you guys have bigger plans? Did you maybe the labyrinth look different, and then they cut the budget and you had to modify it?
Right. Weirdly, not really, because I was new to the business. So, you know, I arrived at the hotel on the Tuesday morning. It was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? This is 3 drafts further in, by the way. And by now I'd met Tony Randall, who was going to direct the movie. So he and I were working together, pre-planning while I was writing I can't remember if I'd done the 3rd draft, and then Tony and I got together while I was doing the 4th. No, I think I'd only done 2. I think it was the 3rd that Tony was there for. Anyway, he had experience in the business. He's my age, but he'd been in the business for nearly 10 years, I think. First as a visual effects editor, and then weirdly as a suit, he was an executive, but he always wanted to get back onto the creative side. And he'd made it clear to Chris and Clive during Hellraiser that if they were looking for somebody else, if they were going to do a sequel, you know, it paid off. They called him. Anyway, what I was going to say was, because of his experience, he was a lot less panicked than me. I assumed I'm going to have to cut a lot of the stuff, especially the expensive effect stuff. But Tony said, no, keep writing what you're doing. Write the movie we want to make. I'll just save time on set. This is all big talk, by the way. He'd never directed a picture before. But he says, okay, so, you know, we wrote this and it was going to be a 3-day shoot for this sequence. I'll shoot it in 2. We wrote this. It was going to take a whole day. I'll do it in the morning. But actually, yeah, Tony and I are still very close friends to this day. So let me say this for him. He was kind of right. You know, he did. Now, the thing is, it wasn't as hard for him, and it certainly wasn't hard for me, because, you know, there's no budget when you're typing. You can come up with whatever you want. But I suspect that if you rounded up Bob Keane's image animation crew, they were the special effects boys, they would probably, I never thought this at the time, but they would probably say, oh, okay, so what you want is exactly what you always wanted us to do, but you want it faster and cheaper. So, okay, fine, we'll just work 23-hour days, you bastards. So I guess that's what happened. So you were very tactful in what you said about could it have been bigger, and it looks okay. No, it was, it kind of looked like the way it was going to look. I mean, it was pretty much state of the art physical effects for 1987. There were 3 or 4, they still call them optical effects then, not CGI.
Right.
And it's, I haven't looked at the movie for a long time, but I suspect the optical effects possibly show their age in a way that the physical makeup doesn't. I mean, we even had Ray Harryhausen like stop motion things in there. A guy called Rory Fellows who was great. Chenard's tentacles, come out of the palm of his hands. That was all traditional Ray Harryhausen, Willis O'Brien stop motion stuff. So we had a lot of the old techniques.
Did you created all of that? Like that Cenobite, did that come like as a? But I'm saying, well, from writing, you and Clive, you said you discussed it. Did you come up with like a lot of the, that he shoots out these tentacles and it's such a cool scene.
Chris, if they hire you to write a horror movie, Chris, you got to write some horrifying shit. That's your job. So yeah, but listen, I want to be really clear that one of the great things about cinema, as I'm sure you know, is it's a collaborative art. Everybody has ideas, and you can look at the writer wrote it, thought up most of it, the director made it, invented how it looks, knew where to point the camera. Everybody on set has thoughts and contributes. Bob Keane's makeup guys. Like I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, without doubt, we the gags for Chenard were all pre-planned and part of the story, but the finished look of the Cenobites. I don't want to take credit away from the lads. Well, you've read the script, so you can remind me if I'm lying or not. I'm fairly sure I did, because the only new Cenobite in Hellbound was Chenard. And I'm fairly certain I did describe the whole
process is described.
The process to make him into that. But the image animation is all young, like 19, 20, 21-year-olds. Very inventive, all great artists. So you see these guys sketching and it instantly reinforms your own ideas. It's like being in a band. So you get, it's like, the lead guitar plays the lead guitar part, but it's colored by what he knows the bass player's doing, or how solid is the drummer laying down a beat? Is it in double time? So you get a lot of back and forth,
collaboration, right?
Good gigs, on the good gigs it's a fun collaboration, and on the bad gigs it's a fucking nightmare because you're clashing and screaming and hating each other. But Hellbound was a great experience.
That's great. Let me ask you about Andrew Robinson. So in the first draft, since he's not in the movie, did you have to work around him not being in the sequel?
Well, interesting question, Chris, because he was. In fact, the biggest change, we're getting back to the question you'd asked earlier, the biggest and most unexpected change was that I think I was 2 drafts in. No, I was 3 drafts in. 3 drafts in, New World heard from Andy's people that he wasn't going to do it. Didn't want to do it.
Andrew Robinson plays Larry, for anybody who doesn't know.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
Forgot to mention that. Sorry. Go ahead.
He's Kirsty's father, plays Ashley Lawrence's dad, whose brother Frank is the evil son of a bitch whose taste in boxes leads to a whole mess of trouble, as we know. But so Larry was in the first 3 drafts. And again, we were fairly close to production by the time this happened, by the time we heard we weren't going to get him. Now, I have to say this, you're prying this out of me. One of the very few disagreements I'd had with Clive and Chris was that on that night when Clive and I were jamming and coming up with the thing, and he said, no, we get this message, and Larry was going to be in hell. Larry was genuinely going to be in hell and had actually asked Kirsty to come and help him. And I'd been saying from the get-go, what did Larry do to deserve to be in hell? This is terrible.
Right.
Why is he in hell? But it was a fight I couldn't win because, Andrew was a name. To people who don't know, who only watch horror movies, Andrew was the Zodiac Killer in Dirty Harry. I mean,
that's right. What an awesome character that was, right?
Right. Yeah, and he's fantastic as him. He's great, and he's great in Hellraiser. One of the reasons he didn't want to do Hellbound was that Clive didn't write it. So I don't want to be unstinting in my praise for Andrew Robinson, but no, he was fantastic in those two movies.
Right.
And the point is, Chris and Clive quite rightly said, shut up, Pete. He's a name. Because remember, nobody knew who Pinhead was yet. It's not like we didn't know we were going to be able to sell the movies on that image, on the strength of Doug in the makeup.
I have a question for that after you're done with this.
Sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, for whatever reason, partly because they brought in a new writer, and Andrew decided he didn't want to do it. And again, I want to be very careful. I mean, no disrespect to him at all, but just thematically, to me, that wasn't a problem. It was like, well, that makes more sense to me. It's always Uncle Frank's evil plan. Larry isn't in hell. Why should he be in hell?
Right.
He wasn't a bad guy. So nevertheless, it did involve some hasty rewriting but I think the fact that I'd never really felt comfortable with Larry being there, plot-wise. It was a job to rewrite it, but it was, in a way, I was probably plugging into what I'd wanted to do anyway, to remove him from it. Because you've got a cleaner narrative. You've got your villain, your creepy perv uncle, his come to daddy shit for Kirsty. It's his plan to get her down there. And that's a much cleaner through line than what we'd had in the first couple of drafts, where Larry was in hell and the brothers had a fight.
Okay. It's interesting.
Yeah, there are copies floating somewhere out there. There are copies of the first and second drafts so you can read versions where Larry and Kirsty escape hell together.
Right.
I can't remember if they must have got Tiffany out with the little mute girl. They must have got her out with them, I guess, in those drafts. I can't remember. I can't remember how we did it in the earlier drafts, but yeah. So that was the biggest single oh shit moment in the what are we going to have to change, and the only, and this is just funnier and more sort of in-house. The only other change I was nervous about is that when I was doing the third draft and when I'd met Tony, he and I clicked immediately, by the way. Right. Same age, very similar tastes and all kinds of stuff. We just, sometimes you just click with people.
Right.
So we had a lot of fun coming up with new stuff for what would end up being the third draft. But because, I don't think you'll mind me saying this, prior to the movie, Tony was actually more of a science fiction guy than a horror guy in terms of his personal taste. So the movement towards, what would you say, a more machine or technology driven hell.
Right.
I'd really give Tony the credit for that. Because the point I'm going to make is that in the first couple of drafts, Leviathan, the boss of hell,
right,
is a much more traditional Lovecraftian goopy monster that's sort of in. I still had those sort of Isha-like frameworks, but it was more like a slime pit in the middle of hell with a sort of vat of goo from which tentacles and Cenobites would be coming out.
Is there any way you can find that online, or is there any pictures?
That draft, it's got to be out there because they all.
There's a picture, there's art of what it looked like.
No, I don't know. Okay. Never got designed.
Okay, no. All right, because that sounds cool, but
yes, you can read my superb description of it in.
Write it draw it myself.
Yeah, you can draw it yourself. I'm sure there's drafts knocking, but no, I don't I'm trying to think. No, because the storyboard guy didn't come on until Tony came on. So no, I doubt there's any artwork for that. Unless Bob Keane's crew had started doing early sketches based on the first draft. Maybe, Chris, maybe you've isolated the holy grail of Hellraiser memorabilia.
Maybe. That would probably be $50,000.
Yeah, the goopy Leviathan goop. They all want to find that. But anyway, Leviathan became this sort of more elegant, as I say, I don't want to say science fictional, but mechanical, technological, the shimmering diamond in the sky, inverse lament configuration. But the thing is, the goopy Leviathan had really been Clive's idea, that at the center of hell there's goop. I'm sure he put it much more elegantly than that when we were although we were drunk by that point. So God knows how he described it. But anyway, that had been his idea. So when Tony and I came up with this inverted pyramid in the sky and black light coming from it, I thought, well, I've got to go in and tell Clive that his idea has been jettisoned and we're going to do this. But he was cool. So it was actually, there was nothing to worry about. He and Chris, especially once we said it's like another configuration of the lament configuration, they thought, oh yeah, cool. Just from a design point of view, that's going to look good and tie the movie together.
I did like the that kind of configuration looking Leviathan. I felt like it went with the way hell looked, like you were saying, and it gave that mystery, and it kind of like, I felt it like if there would have been like some kind of mesh thing, which would have looked cool, maybe it would have taken away from the Cenobites, because there was now another Cenobite, Dr. Chenard. I wanted to ask you to get into Doug Bradley's character.
Sure.
About Pinhead. So when Clive made the first movie, he really didn't recognize Pinhead, and it's not in the book either, right? Pinhead's really not the main hell priest, and he wasn't even
not in. There is a lead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that he wasn't even called Pinhead. It was kind of like the fans called him Pinhead, and he became popular on his own merit, right? Yeah. Go ahead, say what you say.
Absolutely. Well, two things. Yes, you're right. In Clive's original novella, The Hellbound Heart, there's no Pinhead at all in any form. Oh. There is a lead Cenobite, but it's female. Not necessarily the same female Cenobite that's in the movies, but
right.
The boss Cenobite in the story is female. And I think the first time we see her in the story, she's sitting atop a pile of human skulls. I remember reading that and thinking, oh, that's not bad. Doug as lead Cenobite was invented for the movie. And what was the other thing? Technically, it wasn't the fans. It was actually a crew member. Okay. And Clive, you probably know this, never liked. It was a blue collar crew member who just, who are we filming today? It's the woman and Pinhead, right?
Oh.
And Pinhead just stuck as the name, and Clive didn't like it because he felt it was sort of demeaning and insulting to his magnificent Black Pope of Hell creation, and he's right, but there's something really great about just that flat. What is he? What do you call a guy that looks like that? Pinhead.
Right.
It's good. So, in fact, you know what? It was so not yet established that when Chris gave me the job, he misremembered the name, and he said, "Oh, and those demons they're called Cenobites," and told me how to spell it. And I said, "I know how to spell Cenobite, mate. Went to school." But he said, and the leader is, well, that's Pinface. So, you call him Pinface. So in literally the very first typed draft of Hellbound, not Hellraiser, he's called Pinface. And I think it was only when it was retyped by the, I don't want to say secretaries because it's a very old school word, but the ladies who worked in the typing pool at the film production offices,
Right.
either somebody reminded Chris or Doug said, no, I think they call me Pinhead. So it was changed then. But yeah, technically I spent the first 3 weeks writing about Pinface because the name hadn't taken. The movie still, as I say, the movie had not come out. So these are very long answers. They're very good, smart questions, Chris, and I'm just blathering on.
No, keep going. This is great. You're leading me into my next question, and I wanted to ask you. So, like, this second movie came about, the script, and like, I don't know if you were talking to Clive or the producer wanted to get more. Who wanted to get more into the backstory of who Pinhead was, and whose idea was it to get into the kind of the backstory of the Cenobites a little bit in the second movie? You don't really see the rest of them, just
sure,
Pinhead, but
you just
see
get
what they look like.
Right. Yeah, which to this day, Simon and Nick and Barbie still give me shit about the fact that they didn't get to be. Yeah, because again, I don't know if your audience will know this. The humans we see the Cenobites revert to are not the human actors who play the Cenobites. Nick Vince, Simon Bamford, and Barbie Wilde, the three other people. Nick is particularly pissed off because the chatter is revealed to be a little kid.
Yeah, did you get shit for that? Was that like found offensive or anything at the time?
It was a different time, Chris.
I wish it could be that time now.
No, we never heard a word about that. We did. Oh, we got hilariously offended reviews in the mainstream press. There's a sort of right-wing populist rag called the Daily Mail in the UK, and the reviewer. I'm not kidding. This is not an exaggeration. You probably find it online. The reviewer called for the jailing of me, Clive, and Tony for inflicting such horrendous, disgusting imagery on the public, which was fantastic. It's like, because I'd grown up a horror fan, and if I'd read a review of a horror movie in which some dick in a suit said, these people should go to jail, I'd be like, that's the movie I want to see.
Right.
So that I was thrilled when that guy said that. But I'll wind back.
Wait, before you do, I just want to say one thing about the kid.
Sure.
It added an element of sadness to this movie. Like, it already had the horror, but it was just like, wow, this, we all have demons. We all have these pleasures, and we want to indulge, and we want to indulge in instant gratification, and we can get screwed up, and it could happen to anybody, even a child. And it was just like, you think that this monster, and then like when you see it, it's just like, it was the like, whoa, ha moment. So kudos to whoever, if you wrote that, kudos to you.
That was, I knew we were, I don't want to say I said it should be a kid. It could have been me, could have been Clive, could have been Tony, because we mightn't have specified the age until a later draft. So so I'll give us all, if that idiot from the Daily Mail wanted to send all three of us to jail, then all three of us can take a bow for you liking it. But Nick Vince did not like it because Nick wanted to be Nick Vince, the human being. And so we spent 30 years apologizing to Nick. We all still know each other. And Nick's written his own alternate history for the Chatterer in Hellraiser fiction. But the need to have the backstory, it was, I don't know, that was certainly there from the get-go, from that first night when Clive and I started talking. And it was partly, I think, we needed a way for them to be, oh yeah, you know what, you're triggering the memory. This is good. We realized,
like a therapy session.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Because the movie took place in hell, because we sent Kirsty and Tiffany to hell, we realized on that very first night well, you know what it's like when you come up with a story. It's not all linear. You're throwing ideas off. You're talking about this, and sometimes it's an abstract thought, and sometimes it's a very linear plot thing. At some point, I remember now that you said that Clive and I realized, well, shit, we can't defeat them the same way as it, because in the first movie, of course, well, I say all, but brave final girl Kirsty, all she has to do is send them back to hell. And I think we were sort of vaguely just thinking, yeah, well, that's what you do with Cenobites. You send them back to hell. And then I think literally halfway through that first session, we thought, oh, well, we can't send them back to hell. We're in hell. So we were forced to think of, you know, how are we going to get her out of this? And somehow it became that, you know, they were all human once, and if she could unlock the memories, like I say, long time since I read it or saw it, but it was that, I think there actually was a pragmatic through line of, well, we can't send them back to hell, so what is she going to do to beat them, or at least to survive, you know, and get out. So it was that, because the truth is, most of the real backstory for Pinhead actually took place in Hellraiser 3. We did, I don't know if we specified the period and the continent, but we, in the stuff in Hellbound where you see Doug as a human, as a former army
Captain
officer.
Elliot Spencer, right?
Well, right, yeah, but he's not named in Hellbound. That's the point I'm making. We have the shot. We see that it's like he is a vague period British soldier opening the box, getting fucked up, becoming Pinhead. So we had that, and I don't know how much more backstory either we thought of collectively or I'd been thinking, but it wasn't in that movie. When we came to do Hellraiser 3, that's where I came up with the name and the whole notion that he was a member of like the Lost Generation, guys who'd been fucked up psychologically and emotionally by World War One. So that was really more a Hellraiser 3 thing, but certainly it began here with the, we see him in the hut, right? That is in this movie.
You see him in the hut. Well, it opens up like with him in the box. He's in the, you can call it the hut where he is, and then the lights, you know, they become bright. It's the hooks in him. But I was just curious, like he fights with his inner self at the end of the movie, and then Dr. Shinnok kills them all. What was your decision to make?
I got such crap for that at the
You
time.
did?
Yeah. They revived it recently, but there was a classic horror magazine called Fangoria for decades. Remember Fangoria? So Tony Timpone, who was the editor, I won't say he took great pleasure, I don't know if he did, but he forwarded a whole bunch of hate mail, including death threats from 12-year-olds. They weren't, I never actually felt endangered, but yeah, they got tons of letters. This asshole, who does he think he is? He comes in here, his crappy invention, you know, he couldn't beat Pinhead. Pinhead could take them all on. So, and it was, you know, alarming that I'd upset them, but it was sort of thrilling to see, like, I don't know, what would you call it, the brand loyalty, that it was already starting up, that they had their favorite Cenobites and it wasn't going to be Chenard, you know, Pinhead's the king. So yeah, Tony forwarded me a whole batch. I should have kept them. God, I should have kept them. Wonder where they are. Most of them handwritten and very angry. You know,
a lot of curses.
A lot of curses. Yeah.
When you say that the fans wanted Pinhead to be their main Cenobite, was the intention ever to have Julia be in all the movies? Can you talk 100. A little bit about her and like why it kind of diverted from her, maybe in the sequels? But we could stick to this one. Yeah,
no, absolutely. 100% right. one of the things that, you know, one of my jobs when Chris and Clive brought me in was what they had wanted. And again, remember, Hellraiser had not been released. So they had the movie, they knew it was good, but we didn't know what the public was going to think, good and
Right.
bad. So their plan was that, and I think this was Clive's, because, you know, he's a good card-carrying feminist and always has been. And I think his thing was, I want to create the female Freddy Krueger. So his hope was that the through line, if we were lucky enough to keep making sequels, would be Julia. It was absolutely that plan. And you can still see that in a way in the narrative structure of Hellbound. You can see that she's the driving villain. It looks like Chenard is, but he's a patsy. She's playing him.
Right.
It looks like Frank is, but she literally pulls his fucking heart out. She's the queen of hell. And the movie originally ended, and this wasn't only a change in the script, it was shot this way. The bloody mattress at the end that currently ends with the Pillar of Souls coming up after it, and there's all kinds of goopy souvenirs and Pinhead's face. What actually rose out of the mattress in every draft, including the production draft, was Julia, in not particularly Cenobited. I think I said she's wearing a tight black dress. She looks fabulous, or something. But she like rises out of the blood-soaked mattress, levitates in the room, and the camera would zoom into her. I'm trying to remember if I put this as actual shots in the script. The camera zooms into her as her mouth opens, and we see the labyrinth of hell.
Yes.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That's
to
awesome.
say, here it is, Queen of Hell's coming for you. Watch the next. So great, right? So good plan. And think how in advance we would have been, how ahead of the female empowerment in the horror movie movement. But what happened in between that and the release of it, and why Tony had to go, it was a reshoot. The Pillar of Souls was literally a reshoot because Hellraiser had opened. And some smart person in the New World marketing department had looked at the picture of Dog and thought, whoa, that's your ticket, and slapped it on the poster and slapped it on the billboards. And, you know, it's a striking image, and Doug's fantastic, of course. I'll come back to that in a minute and stroke my old pal a little more. But yeah, what literally happened was New World, either in focus groups, like by directly asking, or just getting word of mouth from the street, it was like, oh, forget that. You know, Pinhead is the heart of this franchise, not Julia. Also, it has to be admitted, in the same way that Andy hadn't wanted to do number 2, we found out after we'd wrapped on Hellbound, and Claire was great. She was game throughout the whole movie, but
Claire Higgins, everybody, who plays
Claire
Julia.
Higgins, yes, the brilliant actress who played Julia. I've got a funny story about her and me having lunch, but I'll do this first. Anyway, Chris and Clive, I guess Claire or her agents made it clear to Chris and Clive that she was not interested in being the female Freddy Krueger.
Okay.
So that was a factor too, but it was really that the public just fell in love with Dog.
Now, when you said that they did reshoot, so they actually did shoot the scene of her rising out of the bed?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they did? And
Yeah.
is there any, could you find that anywhere, or is that like hidden in the, not anyone?
I'll ask Tony if he's, nobody is likely to have the original camera negative. I don't think you'll ever get to see good, high quality print of it, but it's certainly possible. Tony could have like a VHS edit print of a first assembly. But before you get too excited, the way I described it, obviously on the day, all that was shot was Claire in a harness against a green screen.
Okay.
So it was never finished in production. The thing I said, we move into her face, her mouth open, I am Julia. Nah, you won't see any of that. But you'll see Claire in a nice black dress dangling over the mattress. So yeah, I suspect Tony, I've never asked him. He's probably got VHS of that, but yeah, it was the shoot. It wasn't the post-production to fix it, unfortunately.
That's good.
I'm surprised. I don't. Listen. For all I never watched these extras that they put on the box sets. For all I know, they might have shown that footage of Julia.
I would love to see it. I have to go search.
They did that big 3-movie box set from Arrow, right? A couple of years ago.
I don't know. I gotta see. I gotta look it up. I watched the it's on Shudder. I think you're on the interview. Yeah. There's Hellbound and Hellraiser. I forgot what the exact documentary was, but
Leviathan.
Leviathan. They had a little bit of footage here and there, but nothing like that, like where it was like that deleted scene or that alternate ending. Could you just tell me where you came up with the idea of the bed and her coming out of the bed and that crazy scene where Dr. Chenard takes the inmate to her house? Is it her house or is it a different house? It's her house?
No, isn't it his?
It's his house? Then he brought
it's his house, but it's weird because it's kind of his. I don't think we were ever clear.
Right.
It looks like he has a house that's part of the Chenard Institute.
And he brought the bed there?
Because it's a trophy room, isn't it? He's got doesn't he have lament configurations in bell jars around?
Yeah, I was always confused by that because I was like, they never established the bed where maybe he got it, but it didn't look like Julia's house from the original movie. That I knew. But besides the production value, I mean the production design, where did you come up with that idea of the inmate coming in and seeing the maggots on him? And it was probably the best part of the movie.
Thank you, Chris. And it's funny. That was there from the get-go. So that came up the first night. That was there in the first 10-page treatment I wrote. So I don't know. It was just like Clive and I would jam in, and because the whole point of it is obviously the casual cruelty of bringing your inmate to slash himself to pieces on the haunted mattress is neither here nor there in Chenard's head. He's a believer, as you can tell. That's his whole thing through the movie. He wants to know.
Right. He's obsessed with it.
He's obsessed with it.
His whole motivation.
And this is, as you say, I don't think they did reproduce the original mattress perfectly. It's meant to be the mattress on which Julia died.
Right.
And in the same way that the drops of blood hitting the floorboards in the first movie were somehow sufficient to bring skinned Frank back up from hell. The same bullshit logic for us was, if you can drop some blood into the mattress where Julia died, we can pull skinned Julia up from hell. When you shine the cold light of logic on these things, Chris, they don't necessarily hold up. But that was the plan. He would unleash her from the mattress. And I got to admit, the two things. When you're young, you're a lot, perhaps, less thoughtful than you should be about the nature of pain. And so I remember a friend of mine seeing Hellbound when it came out, and he said, "The guy's a doctor, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "So a doctor takes this guy and hands him a straight razor and this was the thing that got him. He says, while another doctor hides behind a curtain and watches." he says, I understand if your Chenard guy is a nut job, but this prick behind the curtain, why doesn't he come out and do something about it? He's a doctor. And that had never occurred to me, because the character he's talking about there is played by Bill Hope, another great guy, who plays Kyle.
Right.
And he is hiding behind the curtain. And my thing was, it was purely, what would I do? And I'm ashamed to admit, if that shit was going on in front of me, I would be hiding behind that curtain too. I wouldn't step out and say, stop that right now. Let go of that man. But I'll tell you the other thing, which was another salutary lesson for me. I'm happily typing away at that crap. Slashes across his belly, slashes across his wrist, screaming, get them off me, get it. So type, nasty, nasty, nasty. It's one thing to type it. And then I saw we used to call them the rushes, the dailies, at like, I think 7:30 in the morning in Pinewood Studios outside London. And it was quite nauseating. It was, and of course, because it's just rushes, there's no soundtrack music to help convey the artificiality. You're just looking at a guy slashing himself to pieces on a mattress. And I realized there's a big difference between being tough and brutal while you're typing and then staring at this stuff with, oh my God, that's horrible.
But Peter, I got to ask you this. Isn't that one of probably the greatest feelings in the world, to like, you write something and you see it come to life?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I mean, like, where you're like, wow, I wrote this, and like, look how effective. Yeah, maybe nauseating, but
it's making me want to throw up. It's great.
But that's got to be like such like a reward to know that 32 years later, there's a guy on Zoom who loves your movie, and millions of other people love that scene.
No, it's seriously, Chris. I mean, no, it really does. I mean, I hope you get to know this too. I hope everybody does. It's like, it's fantastic. I mean, we've all kept working. Everybody involved in the movie, well, some of them are dead, but we've all kept working and had other little, pleasures and triumphs in our lives. But no, it knocks us out when, I mean, don't get me wrong, we were cocky little bastards. We thought it was good. It wasn't like, oh, I'm so surprised people like this thing at the time. But now it's like, yeah, it's really, it's always funny when you use words like heartwarming and sweet when you're talking about all this horror stuff that we love. But it is, for all of us that are involved with those things, at 32 years ago. And to find people who were kids when it came out, weren't even born when it came out. No, it is. It's lovely. It's heartwarming and sweet and moving that people still really like this stuff we did. It's great.
It is. What's sad about this whole thing, not the movie, but it's just like these movies that were so wonderful in the 80s. You can't like get, maybe it's very hard to get these type of movies made today. It's just like a different vibe, and they want the hook right away, and they want the character arc. And sometimes in horror, not all horror, but some horror, I don't need a hero's journey on the way. A lot of them I do, but some of them I'm there for the scares, the good concept, and the kills. And I don't need to be distracted by certain elements that plays well in a drama.
Yeah, I agree.
Certain movies are very brilliantly done and well executed, and they have that, something that they're trying to say. But like I said, I don't feel it necessary. And like, a couple of years ago, I wrote a script and I sent it in for like professional review, and it got ripped apart. I mean, ripped apart. The guy was like, he sent it back. He's like, oh, it had a couple of, he said it plays, and it had a couple of nice beats along the way. The rest of it was 3 pages of why it had not one single theme element. I guess I learned from it, and I try to incorporate all that stuff into stuff I write today. But like even I kind of took that concept of the original Hellraiser where I didn't show the monster until the very end. So the last 10 minutes, and I even got shit for that. It was just a script. It wasn't even made. It was just like, you can't do that. You need to have, and what, excuse my French, but what do these people fucking know? Well, I mean, do these gatekeepers.
That's the word.
What are the, do they know good horror? Do they know what sells, or is it based off of like focus groups? And I mean, I guess Hellraiser kind of in its own way, right? It kind of did that with Pinhead, like you were describing. And I understand that this is, it's not just art. It's we want to make money.
It's a commerce. Right? You're spending other people's money. That's the problem.
Right.
Spending other people's money, and so there's a certain responsibility to not piss their money away, and a certain obligation to listen to what they have to say. But things have got really ridiculous in the last 30 years or so.
And formulaic,
yeah.
like crazy.
But I mean specifically, because, there can always be an idiot with a bad idea, right? Since movies began, way before movies. I'm sure there was somebody knocking around the Globe Theatre who tried to explain to Shakespeare, no, man, you can't kill Romeo and Juliet. Give them a happy ending. Let them live.
Right.
So you're always going to have an idiot with an idea. And certainly, again, with movies, with other people's money, you got to listen to them. But there's been an explosion in a kind of sub-industry of, as you say, gatekeepers. Now, we used the phrase gatekeepers back in my day, but that really meant specifically the studio executives you had to persuade to take a chance on shooting your movie. So they were the gatekeepers. It was their money, and they were going to let you in and play or not. But now there's a whole other tier of self-appointed experts who've read their stupid Robert McKee book and their Sid Field book and their whatever book, that know about inciting incidents and blah, blah, blah. And everybody's got an opinion, and some opinions are worth listening to, and many of them are not. But it's really hard. I found it frustrating enough in the 80s and 90s when I was making my living as a scriptwriter. Because your instinct is always, well, they're wrong and I'm right. And you like to feel that more times than not, the artist is right. But I've certainly had good notes. I've had good notes from people, but I felt that they were, for them, when they were good notes, they were coming from people who had a commonality of interest and taste. But exactly as you say, there's a lot of people there who then they'll give you notes on your Western, but they're not Western fans. They'll give you notes on your romantic comedy, but they're not romantic comedy fans. They'll give you notes on your horror movie, but they're not horror movie fans. So they have these sort of generic, formulaic, this is what this genre should do.
Right.
This is what this genre should do. But the truth is, people who actually love the genre in question, like, I wouldn't really give, if somebody handed me a Western script. I like Westerns. I have plenty of Westerns I really like. I wouldn't give them notes based on this is what Westerns should be.
Right.
Because the truth is, only people who fucking love them know what they should be.
Right.
So, like, if a horror, I would rather get a note from some, airhead death metal fan who loved horror than I would from a suit with an MBA, because the suit with the MBA doesn't go and watch these movies. They don't buy them, they don't rent them, and they think they're kind of tacky. So I'm always interested in what people who actually like the genre have to say. But yeah, I mean, I wish I could give you better news, but you're right to be suspicious of people who want you to stick to certain listen, I remember I didn't even know this notion of the 3-act structure for a movie.
Right.
I started. In fact, I think, funnily enough, I managed to keep a poker face. But when I had my initial conversation with Chris Figg, he said, "Oh no, of course, you'll do this and you'll do that, and it'll be your classic 3-act structure." And he just kept talking, and I thought, "What's a 3-act structure?" But I didn't show anything. And then, but I'd been to college. I did English lit at college. So I knew that, 3 acts. So I guess set it up, complicate it, resolve it. So when people give you relatively broad stroke notes like that, those are useful. It's like, keep your pacing up, have something interesting happen. It doesn't have to be scary all the time.
Right.
But like, if you got a scare, then you've earned yourself 10 minutes of non-scare. But that doesn't mean you've earned yourself 10 minutes of boring shit. Even if you're not going to scare them again for 10 minutes, keep it interesting.
Right.
Have something interesting happening. Whether, it can be funny, it can be suspenseful. I'm blathering, but certain restrictions of, nobody really likes a movie that's 5 hours long unless it's an earth-shaking masterpiece. So, think of it as like 90 to 100 minutes, peak it here, stretch it here, peak it there. Things like that are okay. But the whole, we need to learn the hero's mission by the bottom of page 7. I mean, you get such specific nonsense in these how-to books.
Right. Honest question, for people who are trying to break into the business, would you say that to write something that is going to sell, that is formulaic, so that once you get in, you could start making what you want? Or do you say, screw it, write from the heart, and like the right person will come at the right time and pick up your work and could appreciate you for your originality?
I would say the second, but not just in a sort of Pollyanna way of be true to yourself and you will be rewarded. Because, life isn't always fair, and there's lots of brilliant stuff that doesn't get picked up. But I will say this, if you look at it from the other point of view, you can only write what you want to write. I mean, look, may you have these problems. May you get established so that you end up getting paid lots of money to write shit that you don't really want to do, but it'll buy you a house. So I wish those problems for you. But before you get to that stage, no, the notion of trying to write, whatever you said, the formulaic thing that might get you in, it won't. Because you're not writing what you want to see, read, and hear. So it's not so much from I mean, you're absolutely right that you should be true to what you want to do anyway, just on a moral, aesthetic, and emotional level you should be, but also pragmatically, you can't write what somebody else wants. Well, you can write to order for what somebody, you can't predict it. You can't think, I think these unknown people will like this. Your heart won't be in it. You don't know anyway what they want. The guy we mentioned like an hour and a half ago, William Goldman, he wrote a book called Adventures in the Screen Trade about his life as a screenwriter. And he said, if I've learned one thing, and this was like, a 50-year career, if I've learned one thing, it's this: nobody knows anything. And that was his mantra. And nobody knows anything. Right. It's like sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. We never like to admit we're wrong, but we can be. But the one thing for sure is if you write something that you're not into, it's dead on the page. And even if you do like a cool professional job, it's not going to excite anybody, because it's like, the way sort of dogs just walk away from dead animals? Right. It's like one sniff, it's like it's dead. It's not alive. And I think the reason to do the thing the way you want to do it is that because the thing that is alive, the thing that's organic, is at least it's possible that somebody will go, oh, check this out. Whereas if you just write what you think they might want to read, it, you know, no, but nobody knows anything. So
Correct.
equally what I just said might be full of shit too, because you might be able to fake it. You might be able to write something that you really don't care for that works. But I would say play the odds,
Right.
and stick to what you want to do. Because you can tell when somebody's doing it for real.
Right. That's great advice, man. That's awesome. Thank you. Last question. We covered so many topics tonight on this awesome Hellraiser, Hellbound movie. I just want to let you know that there's a lot of talk that it might come to HBO or they're gonna remake Hellraiser into a television show. So, do you think that they're gonna do a good job with it? Do you think they're gonna scale it down to like a PG-13, or is there like anything more to really say that's not been said already?
Well, I mean, the short answer about the TV, but there's two stories knocking around actually. There's been talk about a theatrical remake for a while, for a few years.
Right.
That seems to have died down, though, the franchise is still potentially lucrative for people if they can do it. And there's the TV thing that you're talking about. I'm not involved in any way, so I have no insight or inside knowledge on them. And I have to say, while wishing anybody involved in them the best of luck, I'm not sure I believe they're actually going to happen.
Right.
Simply because I've been hearing for 20 years, oh, there's going to be a TV show. Oh, there's going to be well, the Hellraiser franchise has been very successful there was, I don't think there was ever a video game. The Larry Cuppen was trying for decades to get it launched as a video game. But there were very successful comic books from Marvel in the 90s. So I don't know. It's like, so maybe some of the names that they're knocking around with this possible HBO series, they're real connected people. So maybe it's going to happen. Will it be any good? I don't know. It's like, and that's not meant to be taken as I don't think it will. I would love it to be fantastic. I'd love them to knock it out the park, do a great job, but I don't know.
I hear you.
It depends. If you have to have people who are into it. Basically, what we were just talking about.
Right.
You can't bring in. He is a successful TV writer who has previously written courtroom dramas. A lot of money. Maybe he can do something good with Hellraiser. No, maybe he can. It's possible, but I don't know. My feeling is that, well, I'm going to bite my tongue. I was going to say, let it lie. We should be happy that these movies still exist and people are kind enough to like them. But then I thought, I love the 1930s Universal Frankenstein and Draculas.
Right, me too.
But I love the 1960s Hammer movie Frankenstein and Dracula.
I love that. A lot of people don't know about that. Those are great movies.
Yeah, they're bigger in England, I think. Hammer.
They are.
But yeah,
that's
it's
Christopher Lee, right? And
specialty taste over here. Yeah, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing, yes.
Yeah, they're great. I love them, and so I should bite my tongue. It's like, because you could say, well, Universal did them great with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, so leave them alone. But then there's that example. So maybe, I know Doug is not that happy when other people put the makeup on. So I'd partly, just for my old pal's sake, I want to say, leave it alone.
Leave it alone.
Doug Bradley was Pinhead. Well, you know what? Apparently this guy, Paul Taylor, who did Pinhead in the last movie, that our friend Gary Tunnicliffe wrote and directed. I haven't seen it.
Oh, dude, it was, oh my God. I watched that movie with my ex-girlfriend. I was on the couch with her, and the opening scene is not even like horrific good, like the scene with the bed. It's just gross, disgusting. The guy, they have like this new concept of like this guy like reads the sins, and then there's this heavy guy who comes in and he eats this paper up and like with tears of like something, and he vomits them, and these three girls with no faces ingest it. I don't know what the hell they were doing.
That was great. What's wrong with you?
It wasn't great. It wasn't great in the sense of like in like the first couple of movies. It was like, and then then it starts off. It was like a rip off of Seven. That movie Seven. It was like another.
Oh yes.
Cop. Sure. It was a cop movie. You know, it was a detective movie, and then the last 5 minutes, Pinhead, it shows up and it kind of.
Well, I know, because the truth is, no offense to anybody involved in any of the movies, I think I saw one of the direct-to-video sequels, but I haven't really seen them. Like I was glad Doug kept getting a payday. And what I was going to say was, I hear Paul Taylor, who played Pinhead in that last one, that you've so viciously described.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, but I hear he's a great guy and a nice guy and did a good, some people say did a good job as Pinhead. So right. I'm not, it's not, I don't want to be like that old guy. It's like, no, we had our fun and now we're taking our ball home. It's like if other people can do things with it, great. I'm not sure Doug feels quite the same way. I think.
I think. Listen,
just once. This is just so weird. I really didn't set this up, although I'd already put it up online somewhere. My sister sent me a bunch of photographs back from home in England, and just as I said about Doug being Pinhead, this is me mum visiting us on the set of Bloodline, Hellraiser 4 in 1996, and that's Pinhead in his t-shirt having a tea break. I don't know if you can.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So
that's so cool.
Sorry, it was just literally as you were talking. Anyway, so yeah, Doug is not completely cool with the franchise being passed on to other hands, but
right.
I can certainly understand that. But I would assure him, both as his friend of 40 years and as a film buff, he's made his mark. It's not like anybody's going to forget that right. Doug Bradley was Pinhead.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, I'll end it with this. I thought 1 to 4 it kind of ended, and 5 is kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. So I really like 1 and 2 are my favorite.
Yeah.
I loved 4. I mean, we could. I don't want to, because we'll go on for another hour. Yeah. But I really did enjoy it, and like at first when I saw the box cover, I was like, oh, this is stupid. It's in space. But when I saw it, I was like, this is really good. I really enjoyed it with the toy maker, and sure. I feel like it should have got more recognition, but it felt like I don't know, like the first 4 movies was like a complete saga, and then it just went to those straight to video, or like I heard rumors that like the next 3 movies were just not even Hellraiser scripts. They were just movies modified to become Hellraisers so they could keep the franchise.
Yeah, I gather that's true. I don't know that for a fact, but yeah, I was told that at the time, right? And I think that's true. We did think of it that way, to be honest. We'd done like the trilogy with 1, 2, and 3, sort of, and in a way, like all trilogies do, a sort of cheat. What we'd done by the end of the 3rd movie is put everything back where it was at the start of the first one, so it had a sort of neatness to it. So when we were going to do number 4, we thought, well, what are we going to do now? We're going to tell a new story. So we thought, well, we could do a prequel and a sequel to that central trilogy and like tell the story of the box makers family over the series. So yeah, we did feel like that it was like, not that we thought anybody would ever do this, but the way Francis Coppola cut together Godfather 1 and 2
Yes,
into like
Godfather Saga.
Yeah, right. So we thought, okay, so what we want to do in number 4 is we want to have footage where you could take out the 18th century stuff, put that in before Hellraiser, and then have the other stuff after Hellraiser 3, and then end with, Pinhead in space, guilty. But yeah. And then I think it is true. And that was Hellraiser 4 was the last theatrical release.
Right.
They went non-union and direct to video after that. So, which doesn't mean they can't be good or bad or great, but it was, in a way, it was a clean break. There's the 4 theatricals that sort of. I know some people hate number 3, and a lot of people think number 4 is a mess, even though they're fond of it. They think it's a mess, but with the strengths and weaknesses, the first 4 kind of lock together into one thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Peter, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I really appreciate your time. You gave me so much awesome information about this movie. I was so curious to ask you all these questions. So thank you, dude.
Oh yeah, no, it's been great. Thank you. You know, and everybody out there who's your age and younger, thanks to you for still liking this shit we did 30 years ago. It's great. It's really. I was a horror fan when I was a kid, all my life, and it's just great to see, you know, the torch get passed and that people still, because we're all one tribe. You know, I had friends. This is such a name drop. God, I didn't mean to do it as a name drop. I was lucky enough to end up being friends with people like Ray Bradbury, because I came out here and met people. And so, you know, people I'd read when I was 12, I got to know, you know, who Ray Bradbury is, right? Look him up if you don't.
Now I can't think of him. What did he do? He did what?
Well, the most famous movie based on his work is Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Oh, right. Yeah, right.
And he wrote The Illustrated Man, and he wrote Fahrenheit 451. Great American short story writer. And usually called a science fiction writer, but his first decade's output was all horror stuff. He was a Weird Tales author. I'm getting very nerdy now. But what I'm saying is, I loved the fact that I had guys in their 70s. When I was in my 40s, I had friends in their 70s and 80s and friends in their teens and 20s. And it's all just one tribe. It's like we like this stuff we like, you know. So So anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate it. Yeah. This is Pod from the Crypt. This is Chris, and thank you again to Peter Atkins. We'll see you later.